the Sounds True Podcast Network.
I learned a lot of things from roller derby. I would go to roller derby bouts and thought it would be the coolest thing ever to join. But at the time, I was in my early and mid 30s. I had 2 babies at home, and I thought, there's no way. I made up all these excuses as to why I couldn't go. And I realized, like, do I want to have this be my story in 20 years when my daughter asks, like, I noticed you're interested in roller derby. Why didn't you ever play? And I told her that I was afraid to join. So that was one of the things I learned. You have to actually go after it.
In this episode of Insights at the Edge, I'm with Andrea Owen, author, global keynote speaker, professional certified life coach who specializes in working with high-achieving women. Her books include Make Some Noise, How to Stop Feeling Like SHIT. Her books have sold more than 300,000 copies and have been translated into 19 languages. And with Sounds True, Andrea Owen has created an audio immersion workshop. It's called Getting Damn Good at Life. I think of Andrea as a damn good coach, one of the damn goodest coaches I've ever met. And I'm so pleased to be able to let you know that she's released now a new book with Sounds True. It's called Live Like You Give a Damn, 25 bold moves to get honest, face the hard stuff, and show up for yourself. Friends, stay with us. Andrea, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on. I know I said this last time I was here, but for people who don't know, this is my second time here, but not my second time with Sounds True. It's many times over because Sounds True was the first company that I ordered personal growth materials from. So back in, I think it was around 2006, my life had just fallen apart. I got your paper catalogs and I would hover over it and decide, do I want Caroline Mrs. Work or Angela's Arian, like just these amazing thought leaders of the time. And this was back when we had MP3s and it is such a full circle moment again, to be having this conversation with you. So thank you for starting Sounds True and being a pioneer in this industry and for having me as one of your authors.
Well, and you just made me think of a new tagline. Sounds true for when your life is falling apart. And, interestingly, though, you're someone who writes brilliantly about when your life is falling apart and when you're down, how to get back up. And I actually think that's an interesting place for us to start. And if we can, I want to start talking about this falling down, getting back up, by you describing to us your career in roller derby. I know you retired from that more than a decade ago, but what you learned from roller derby about falling down and getting back up.
Mm-hmm. I learned a lot of things from roller derby. One, this isn't about falling down and getting back up, or I guess it could be if you want to look at it through that lens, was just the action of going and talking to the people to try out. So roller derby had its resurgence in the early 2000s, and I was watching intently, and I would go to roller derby bouts and thought it would be the coolest thing ever to join. But at the time, I was in my early and mid 30s. I had 2 babies at home, and I thought, there's no way I'll get hurt. I'm definitely not as cool as these women. I made up all these excuses as to why I couldn't go. And I realized, like, do I want to have this be my story in 20 years when my daughter asks, like, I noticed you're interested in roller derby. Why didn't you ever play? And I told her that I was afraid to join. So that was one of the things I learned. You have to actually go after it. But falling down and getting up is one of those things that is inevitable in roller. Like most sports, like you're going to get, you're going to be on the ground. And one of the things I loved about roller derby is that for safety reasons, they have rules about how long you can stay on the track flat. Like you have to get up within a certain amount
Right.
of seconds, or else they blow a whistle and stop because they realize you're hurt. And so I thought it was interesting that they had this rule about it, about the amount of time you get to be on the ground. And I don't think that we should relate that literally to personal growth. Like there's only a set amount of time that you're going to be in this setback. But that's one of the things I learned is that like, oh, okay, I can, have a time limit about something and just like know that I'm going to get up. And that if I don't, that it's a real emergency, that like that is the time to ask for help. And I love, sports metaphors. We could go on all day about that. But that was just one of the many things I learned.
Well, it's interesting that you talked about this notion of, you're down on the ground. How long are you going to give yourself? Because when I went through a difficult period, I had people from the outside saying, okay, time's up. And I said, I used, one of the curse words in response to them, because there was something important about that period that I needed to name and, dare I say, grieve. And I wonder what your advice is, besides that you need to reach out for help, which I think makes a whole lot of sense. But how else do we identify what's actually needed when we're down on the ground?
I think first and foremost, just compassion for ourselves, that it's okay that we're there. I don't know that we yet have gotten to a place culturally where we have given people enough space, time, energy, support in their falling down moments. And I think that sometimes we can be the hardest on ourselves. It's not the people around us. It's our own mind that's telling, our memories or conditioning really, that's telling us that it's time to get up. I mean, if you think about it, in most corporate America spaces, they give us 3 days off for bereavement. And it's expected that we come back to work and that all is well, generally speaking. And it's just one of those things where I believe that it starts with ourselves and giving ourselves the grace and compassion to be able to be down as long as we think that we need to before we look to other people to make that decision for us.
This theme of trusting your own inner authority, trusting yourself, it runs throughout all of the 25 bold invitations, bold moves. I have to say, I printed out the chapter headlines, and looking at them, I could stare at any one of these and it would be a teaching just to drop into it, any one of them. I'm going to share some of the chapter headlines, and then we're going to go into them. You will disappoint people. Always bet on and choose yourself. Keep your side of the street clean. You will be handed a shit sandwich. There's more. There's a lot. Why don't we go right to you will be handed a shit sandwich? Because I really liked this particular chapter, because I think what you pointed to was somehow that many of us have an expectation that we won't be handed that in life. That's not, or if it does happen, I did something wrong, right? And what you seem to point out as the premise is that we were actually made for these kinds of things. So how did you come to that assertion?
Now I don't know if I've made this connection until just now, the way that you put that. And I love that. I love learning things about myself through interviews where people are asking about my work. Like one of my favorite things ever. So thank you. My mom is a very, very direct person. And she, that is, you'll be handed a shit sandwich is for sure. And I may have heard that from her along the way, being raised by her. But it's one of those things where I believe that transparency is the best gift we can give people. And it's different from honesty, because honesty is when you ask me a question and I give you an honest answer. Transparency is when the question doesn't even need to be asked. You automatically come and tell me the information about something, kind of like proactively knowing that I'm going to wonder about it. And so that's how I look at this. Is I think that in personal growth spaces, sometimes we can get caught up in the notion in regard to positive thinking and trying to look at the bright side, that have faith and the net will appear, and you will be, bet, even things like that I say, like bet on yourself, and always bet on yourself. And it's like, yes, all of those are true. And at the same time, life hurts sometimes. We are going to be dealt situations and circumstances that we didn't see coming, that we certainly don't like, that we don't know how we are going to get out of it. And so that whole chapter is me saying it's a guarantee that you are going to fall on your face. And so if that's a known, like, how do you want to handle that? I've been in this industry, for the wellness industry, for 20 years, the personal empowerment space for 17 years. And it's still makes me frustrated to hear advice that doesn't look at the reality that life is sometimes going to throw us for a loop. And it's best to be proactive about your coping mechanisms and support systems and things like that.
Leap and the net might not appear?
Sometimes it doesn't appear. I can't. I have 2 teenagers, and I tell them that sometimes, like, I cannot promise you that the net will appear. I can't promise you that I will get there fast enough and put the net there for you. I can promise you that sometimes I'm going to purposely not have a net there for you so that you can learn things the hard way. But yeah, that's life.
Now, always bet on yourself. You said, oh, that's something you'll hear from me, and it's one of the chapters. And tell us what you mean by that.
I came to a conclusion late. I was probably in my I just turned 50 this year. And so it probably around my late 40s where I realized I don't know if I have ever been in a place in my life where I have consistently been able to bet on myself. In other words, like, where I trust myself, where I trust my own intuition, I trust my own resilience, because that's a big one. And I don't know if I've bet on myself. I was pretty sure that I had put my eggs in other people's baskets, even if I had sworn that I would never do that again. Like, I was still kind of putting my happiness and my joy and my fulfillment, my purpose even, into other people's hands, and hoping that they did a great job with it, and was disappointed over and over again. And really, I just was faced with that question of, do I bet on myself? And if I do, what on earth does that look like? And what the conclusion I came to was just these everyday decisions that I make, and truly knowing that at the end of the day, if my partner left me, if my marriage fell apart, if if my dog wasn't here anymore, and like, would I be able to count on myself and really trust my inner wisdom and these types of things? And it's not like a doom and gloom, you can only trust yourself, don't trust anybody else. It's not like that at all. But it's like, I should be the go-to person to trust in terms of what's next for me and things like that. So that's sort of what I mean by betting on yourself.
Now, I want to talk more about that in 2 different ways. One way is when you say, if my dog wasn't here, if my partner wasn't here, if I lost this, I would still have my own kind of inner resources.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, well, would I have the ability? Do I have the confidence that I can go through the heartbreak of those losses? And what gives that kind of inner, I guess it's a kind of confidence, and I know you teach and write about confidence, the confidence to go through the heartbreak hell?
Mm-hmm. The word that it might just be semantics, but to me, it's trust. It's trusting in yourself. And it's what I just mentioned. It's trusting in my own resilience. So I see this a decent amount in the clients that I coach, is that it's typically when we're afraid to do something, like, say you're in a partnership that intuitively, that it's probably come to an end, and you are, or maybe you either need to break up or have a really hard conversation with your partner. One of those 2, both not comfortable situations. And so you might avoid, procrastinate, find ways to not reasons not to do it. And essentially the way that I look at that is, it's not that we're really afraid of having the conversation. Like maybe we are, like we don't know what to say, but it's more so that we're afraid of what's on the other side. We're afraid of the emotional impact on ourselves that the conversation might create. We're afraid of the emotional impact it might create with our partner, and then we're going to have to deal with that. Or we're afraid that we won't be able to recover from that emotional trigger that happens, or from the decision that comes from that. Because it's usually like an unconscious thing. It's like we're not sitting there consciously thinking like, oh, I'm really worried about how I'm going to feel after this. Like your nervous system sure is tracking it. Even if your brain isn't. So all that to say, if you could take some time, for people listening, like take some time to think, like, do you trust your own resilience? Do you trust that you have the support system around you, or your own coping skills and ways to support yourself? Do you trust that you have enough of that inside of you in order to get through a difficult scenario? And like, that was the question that I asked myself. And I was like, I don't think that, by the way, it's a hazard being a life coach, because we're always like asking ourselves these existential questions. but I realized, I'm like, I don't think I trust my own resilience, even though I've been through other hard things before. Like, I don't know if my nervous system is on board with that. So that was the work I personally had to do. So that's some food for thought for the listeners there.
Well, let's go into it a little bit more, because you speak publicly about how the dissolution of your second marriage happened not that long ago. How did you come to trust your own resilience through that process? What did you have to do or encounter or develop so that you could come out the other side and be here now talking to me about it in the past tense?
You know what it was? I had and this typically doesn't happen to me, but I had a moment. Usually for me, my big life lessons come over time, slowly but surely. And this time I was in a breathwork class, and the facilitator, it was, she was like, it was like in a studio, and she had one of those like studio microphones, and she was just kind of doing these very sort of life coachy mantras and things like that. And I was paying attention, but I was very much in my body and having a really great breathwork experience. And there was one thing that she said that stuck with me and just was so powerful in the moment. And she said, "There's so much available to me." And I was like, what if that's true? What if I believed that about myself, that there is so much available to me? What would so much be? And it could be anything, really. And it was just that moment of hearing that affirmation, that one statement, that one powerful statement, and it's staying with me and just sort of looping. There's so much available to me. There's so much available to me. And so I just adopted it as my own mantra, and then started to look for evidence that that was true. And really, when that happened, I started to realize that I have a history of self-abandonment, and that history of putting everyone before me was based on the fact that I did not trust that I could bet on myself. I did not trust my own resilience. And all that came down to trusting that there was so much available to me. So trying to make a long circle connection here, and hopefully it's coming through clearly. But it really came down to that, is believing that there was so much available to me and making that statement what I needed it to be.
From that statement, how did that inform your actions? Like, how did that actually change you?
I decided that I asked myself the question again, because I'm a coach and I ask a lot of questions. I asked myself, like, okay, so if there was so much available to me, if I knew that, what would I do differently in my life? Like, what would I change? And one of the answers that I came to was I would really start trusting my own body. And what was happening around the time, like not long before I left, maybe about a year before I left my marriage, was that I got sick. What was later diagnosed 18 months later, an autoimmune condition, a chronic autoimmune condition. But it was also right around the time perimenopause was starting for me. I was in my mid 40s. Also, the pandemic was in full swing. So I didn't know if my symptoms were from those two major circumstances. But my intuition was telling me something is wrong with my physical body. Something is out of alignment. And it was my body was trying to talk to me. And so that was one of the things that came out of me, just that statement of there's so much available to me. If I look at it as there's so much information available to me. There are so many clues available to me. My body was trying to tell me, girl, you need to leave your marriage. It's making you sick. And it was the self-abandonment piece. It wasn't my ex-husband that was making me sick. It wasn't even his behavior that was making me sick. It was me. It was me not listening to the fact that this is the end of our chapter. We had a beautiful marriage at one time and now it's time to end. That was what I was refusing to hear because I didn't trust myself. And so that's really what I realized was available to me was my own wisdom.
You're someone that I feel so comfortable talking to and
Thank you.
excited to speak with. And as we're talking about really trusting your life, trusting yourself, I want to share with you that in a confessional spirit, but not too confessional, I'm not going to take too long, but that one of the things I've been working with is just being okay with my natural energy, which is a lot. It's intense. It doesn't always fit in situations. And can I actually wholly 100% trust it, even if it appears to be not what is reflected to me normally in the status quo in different situations like that, and how that liberates so much when I do. And I'd love to hear you talk more about that in a sense of trust, how we trust how we are before we try to fit into anything.
Yeah, I think that for many of us, especially those who hang out in these circles of personal growth and spirituality and just kind of overall wellness, I believe that I call us seekers, like we're seeking like bigger answers to bigger questions and things like that. And I think that most of us will get to a place in our life exactly like you described, where you're kind of questioning how your own judgment against yourself, and in this case, like your own energy, or maybe it's people are kind of questioning their own personality and how they fit in and things like that. And I believe that, and I'm going to kind of answer this question maybe in a roundabout sort of way. I believe that is, like I was just saying, like that is our inner wisdom speaking to us in sometimes quiet ways at first. And it's just this whole notion of getting to a place where you can feel whole, or I also use the word complete when I'm talking about this, because one word might not resonate with someone. But I believe that most of us at the end of the day are looking for a handful of things like feeling alive, feeling whole or complete. And what you just described, I would put in that category of really accepting your entire personality as is. And if I could offer this one sort of anecdote that relates so much to what you were just saying, is that one of the beautiful things that came out of the ending of my second marriage was a really great marriage counselor. And I've seen many, and I've been married twice, so I've seen many a therapist and many a couples counselor. And he asked us a lot of really great, powerful questions. And one of the questions that he asked was about 10 months into our journey. He asked me, Andrea, would you be able to accept your husband, I won't say his name, exactly as he is, without changing at all, his behavior? You guys have been seeing me for 10 months. Like, would you be willing to do that? Just completely accept him for who he is. And I said, absolutely. Everyone deserves that dignity to be accepted as they are. And if I do that, which I would love to do, I don't think I can be in this marriage anymore. And it was such an awkward moment, and sad moment. But I was admitting something that was very true to me that I had never admitted out loud, is that everyone, including my then husband, deserves to show up as their most authentic self in all of their glory. And sometimes that means that you're not a fit for other people. And sometimes those people, you're married to them. And so I tell that story to hopefully make you realize that like, people realize that like, it's okay to lean in. And if it's something that feels like it's calling to you, I would definitely answer that call.
When we started, Andrea, we talked about you were Veronica Vane. That was your name when you were a roller. How'd you come up with that name for your roller derby career?
I love an alliteration, and I was the one on the team that always had really great hair and makeup done. And so they would joke and I would say that I would say whatever my derby name is, she's going to be conceited. And so it's VAIN. And so Veronica Vane was born.
Right. So I love these sports metaphors, and it's really more than a metaphor for those of us who like to play sports. It's something we enjoy and learn from. And one of your chapters is Rush the Net. And you talk about how with your father, this was something you learned when you were a kid playing tennis. Tell us what the lessons are from rushing the tennis net.
So my dad was an avid sports person. He was an athlete, and he was also a very sensitive soul who was born in 1936, and that, you know, it was not widely accepted to be a man and be such a sensitive soul. But one thing that he did was he was my tennis coach growing up. I grew up on the tennis court, and he mostly taught me. And one of the things that he also taught me how to have a very firm handshake and how important that was. And the title chapter originally was going to be Rush the Net and have a firm handshake, but it didn't flow very well. And so I took that part out. But he did teach me to rush the net. And in singles tennis, many players use it as a strategy to intimidate their opponent. And it's also very much a risk to do that because you're leaving space open behind you. And it's an aggressive strategy. And so my dad taught it to me in a way and I was very young at the time and not an aggressive girl, but it was his way to show me that risk taking, you can get used to it, and that can be your own strategy. And whether it's to, you know, send a social cue that you are confident even when you're not feeling confident, kind of a little bit of a fake it till you make it type of game, or if it's just to get into the habit of risk taking, to realize that, okay, sometimes the net won't appear unless I'm running face first into it on the tennis court because I rushed the net a little bit too hard. but like that you can recover. And I thank him for that. Like I thank him for teaching me a strategy that was scary at the time and at such a young age, to practice it over and over again, and to also have it go wrong and realize like, all right, you just keep trying, but you could like make this your thing. Like if you keep practicing and keep practicing. So then I ended up writing a chapter about it in the book.
Well, and you write, action creates the confidence. Confidence doesn't come first. Action does. And, you know, I mentioned that I call you the damn good coach. And I've heard this from a couple of the damn good coaches I know. They always emphasize, what are the actions you're going to take, Tami? What's the action? What's the action? Report on the action. So I wonder if you could say more about that. How come action? Like just rush the net first.
I wish everyone listening, like, I wish this wasn't the case, you know, where we had to actually do the thing. Like in the book, I say, in order to change your life, you have to change your life. And what I mean by that is take action. And it can be one of those places that really keeps people stuck. I call it the point of no return, when you know that you want to change, like you see the behavior that you don't like. And also you might see the steps that you have to take ahead of you, or maybe you don't know what they are, but you know it's some kind of action and you're either too scared or you don't know what the action is. So you're kind of stuck. I call it this point of no return, or I also call it like a wobbly bridge that you're on, where you're just like waiting, and people can stay stuck there forever. And I don't want that for anybody. Like, yes, it's part of the journey, but don't stay stuck there. And we are, I think, just misinformed if we believe that confidence is gained just through reading the book, or that you're born with it, or that you can borrow some from someone else. And yes, you can be motivated by other people and learn about the brain science from books and things like that. But I will save you some time and tell you that the books and the research shows that confidence comes from experience. Like that is the main way that we gain most of our confidence. And really, like if we're going to talk about brains, like our brain and our nervous system needs the evidence that not necessarily that it's going to work out. But again, it comes back to that, like, how resilient are you? Can you get back up after you have either made the wrong decision or even like been humiliated and things that are more emotionally jarring? And so, yes, rushing the net is also about taking action. And that is the thing. And again, I wish it was easier, but it is the thing that allows us to gain the confidence that we need to keep going or do additional things that are scary or make us afraid, as well as just like keep the momentum up and like prove to us like, okay, we're not going to die. It might feel like it, but we're not going to die if we do this scary thing.
Can you share with us a scary thing that you did recently that you said, just rush the net, Andrea?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I fell in love again. Like that was scary. And it was such a funny moment too, because, I had left my marriage a couple hours. I waited a little bit longer for it to dry, a couple of years prior. And really got to a place where I am good by myself for a while. And just was really kind of at that place, how people post divorce or post breakup often say like, oh, I'm working on me. Like I truly was. And I even got a new book idea in that place. And my intention for that whole time was really, what if I don't self-abandon? What if I just lean in to all of me? And I dated for fun and gathered a lot of data, if you will, just like learning about myself. Like I don't even know a lot of things about myself that I should know about myself. And then honestly, accidentally met someone who also was not looking for a relationship. And we met each other and had so much chemistry. And we both kind of looked at each other and were like, okay, this is not expected, but do you want to do this? And do you want to do it with like a lot of intention? And we were both like, yes. Like, do you want to do this very consciously, this relationship? Like we both just turned 50. Like, yes. And so that was a point in my life where it was scary, but also my yes was very much rooted in my own inner wisdom. My intuition was also nodding its head and saying like, I don't know how this is going to turn out. It might not work out, but it's going to be super fun and you're going to learn a lot in the beginning. Like that's what my intuition was saying. And also just, it was rooted in a place of detachment, which is something that I've never experienced before in really any relationship, even in my female friendships, like the whole concept of detachment, which is a whole nother conversation that we can have. But that was something that I intentionally walked into as I did this, as I said yes to this scary thing.
Well, briefly, tell me what you mean by it and how you knew you had a level of detachment in this new relationship.
Previously, I fell into sort of the traditional social conditioning that is handed to a lot of girls and women of, it is a high priority for me to be picked, by a man. And that is my path. And if I can make that happen, then I will be rewarded with, acceptance from society, with, tax benefits, but also, like this is how it's supposed to be. And I tried that and I focused on that and got married the first time and it didn't work out. And I was devastated for years and had trauma from that. And then I tried it again and it did work out. And we had a beautiful marriage until we just really grew apart. And that was also very sad and not quite as devastating because I had grown and evolved. But in both of those long relationships, I realized that I was attached to how, not necessarily even like how the relationship turned out, but I was attached to how this person viewed me, my partner viewed me, how they felt about me. and then thus how the relationship was. I equated those things to my worth and to who I was as a human. Was I a good enough woman? Well, let's turn to my partner and ask them. Like that's what and I was attached to that. I was attached to being picked like as a partner, like as a human, and I was attached to the consequences of their feelings for me. And that is no way to live. And I think that a lot of us do that without even knowing. And I knew that when I left the second marriage, this second long relationship I had been in, was that my greatest gift to a future partner and to myself was to walk into the relationship working on detachment. I don't know if we ever get to a place where we are completely and fully detached, but I think that more specifically, the work is about not attaching our worth to either the outcome of the relationship, to the health of the relationship, to the way that our partner feels about us, to the way that we're viewed by other people for having the relationship, things like that. That is what detachment is to me.
In Live Like You Give a Damn, you bring up this phrase that I'd never heard before, big prize energy. You can live with big prize energy. And as you're talking, it's reminding me of that. And I really liked that and was feeling into it in terms of what I was saying to you previously about being okay, basically, with my, I feel like it's my weirdness or whatever, but just being okay with being me. That what if I actually viewed myself with this big prize energy? And as you're talking about even approaching a new relationship as a quote unquote big prize. So tell us what you mean by that.
Oh my gosh. I really went back and forth. I write about a lot of vulnerable things, Tami. And for some reason, writing about that felt so vulnerable because it felt.
Even as I said it, I felt kind of exposed. Like, really, Tami, you're going to tell everybody
embarrassed for
you're
me.
the big prize? Like, no, I was embarrassed for me that I picked it up and that it was important to me. And now I'm talking, but I also found it empowering.
Okay, good. Thank you. It was something that came to me when I realized it was that same thing that I was just telling you, like when I started to realize how much I had self-abandoned in my past relationships. And I actually, there's a PS, there's a decent amount of self-abandonment work in Getting Damn Good at Life, which is the audio program I did with Sounds True. But I realized that I had a history of self-abandoning and that I also wasn't. I'm like, I'm fine if I don't have a partner. Like I'll live just with my kids part-time and some cats.
Andrea,
and
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second because, when I hear that history of self-abandoning, I kind of think I know what you mean, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
So I wonder if you could also just say what you mean by that word, because I know that word has come into the vocabulary now, but I'm not 100% sure I know.
Yeah. So I love when people expand on self-help jargon that people might not know what that means. Self-abandonment is when we, it's interchangeably often used with the word codependency. And so it's when we essentially walk away from ourselves in order to walk towards someone else. So when we put other people's needs before our own, when we make it a priority to make other people have a more convenient life, a more comfortable life at the expense of ourselves. And so we are self-abandoned when we're not setting boundaries. We're self-abandoning when we feel resentment and refuse to have a conversation with the person that we're feeling resentment about for whatever reason. When we stay in relationships that we know aren't good for us, when we allow ourselves to, when we're people pleasing, that's self-abandonment.
All right. Okay. So you were saying about this big prize energy that you realized you had a history of engaging in self-abandoning behaviors.
Yeah. And sneaky self-abandonment. Like I had come a long way. Like I was pretty good at setting boundaries at that point, but I was still self-abandonment in many ways. And so when I left my marriage, I decided, okay, what would it mean for me to show up? Because I'm similar to you. I have a lot of energy. I've been told many times, turn the volume down. Can you calm down? Can you stop squirming so much? Like, can you not laugh so loud? Like, can just the overall feeling of uncomfortable.
Say something appropriate.
Right. Can you ever, like keep your voice down? And so I thought, okay, what if I looked at myself as a prize? Because I wanted a stretch goal. Because it's one thing to just like, what if I just accepted myself as it is? And I want to take it one step further. So I said like, okay, what would feel like a stretch? It would feel like a stretch to walk around feeling like I am a prize and knowing that I'm a prize and that it is a privilege for me to give you my time. It is a privilege for you to get my energy and attention. Like, what if I believed that? Would I show up differently? For me, the answer is yes. I made a Spotify playlist of that's called Big Prize Energy with like embarrassing songs like Pour Some Sugar on Me. Like I went like for all in on Big Prize Energy. I started buying clothes that like my 15-year-old self wanted to wear that never did because she was worried about standing out too much in high school. And I started doing things that I felt like I finally was just saying yes to the voice that always wanted to be extra. And I never had done that before. I never even joined musical theater because even though I wanted so desperately to hang out with those people, I joined the cheerleading squad instead because I felt like that was more fitting for me. And like when all I wanted to do was just like be goofy with the musical theater kids. So it's like I felt like I was in my musical theater kid era. And truly that's when I started to feel alive. And it was scary. I'm not going to say that it was super easy. It was very scary at times and messy and also awkward as I'm kind of like learning to ease into this new version of myself. But it was, some could say, a little bit of a midlife crisis. I call it Big Prize Energy. Tomato, tomato.
Okay, someone's listening and they go, I'm 51% with you with being this big prize energy myself in my life. But there's this other part of me, the rest of me, that's like, oh, now you're going to be vain. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Andrea was willing to be Veronica vain, but I don't want to be perceived as being kind of all up in myself and how great I am, or whatever the other reasons are. People may recoil from this notion.
Mm-hmm.
How do they sort that out to come into an authentic alignment with big prize energy?
So, well, first I would tell people to get clear on what big prize energy would look like to them. So maybe a better question to ask would be, if you take your personality, your natural personality, and you turned up the volume, maybe, I don't know, a couple notches, what would that look like? What would you be doing differently? What would you lean into more of that you're already doing? What would you say yes to that you normally say no to? What would you say no to that you normally say yes to if you were turning up the volume on your inherent personality or maybe your aspired values, things like that? And I love the narrative example that you gave, because that is exactly what I was telling myself. Like, nobody wants a middle-aged white lady to be walking around like she owns the place. Like, how embarrassing. Like, I need to act like a woman, my age should act. And so luckily for me, I have an advantage because I have many years as a coach. And so I do what I did and I started coaching myself. And there was something that you said that I'm going to point to, because I think it's such a common thing that where our negative self-talk goes, is you said something like, oh, I don't want to be perceived as conceited. And same, I don't. The protective mechanism in me absolutely does not want to be seen as somebody who walks around with big prize energy. And so that's when I know I'm onto something, because I'm also trained and certified in around shame work in Brene Brown's methodology. Dr. Brene Brown's a well-known researcher around the topics of shame and courage. And one of the things that I teach is this concept of how shame is essentially running our lives because we are unconsciously scanning for ways that we do not want to be perceived by other people. So I showed up to this interview already with a list of ways I don't want to be perceived by you and by your producer here on the show. I want to be perceived as reliable and professional and well-spoken and thoughtful and smart and all these things. And I also have a list of ways I do not want to be perceived by you. I don't want to be perceived as silly and too goofy and or frivolous and not paying attention and all these ways. And so in every role of our life, we have this list of unwanted ways that we don't want to be seen by other people and ways that we do want to be seen by other people. Whether we know them or not, they're running the show. That dictates how I show up. And it also dictates how I don't show up. So if I do not want to be perceived a certain way, I'm going to usually try to avoid it. So I went into detail there because my hope is that people can look at these different roles in their life, whether it's their, business owner or partner, parent, whatever it is, and look at the ways that they don't want to be perceived by other people. Because A, we don't have any control over that, unfortunately. And B, inevitably, it is going to happen. You're going to be perceived in a way that you don't want to be because people judge. We all do. And people make mistakes. And so the sooner you can realize, oh, I don't want to be perceived in that way, and then get curious about that. Why do I not want to be perceived as somebody who's conceited or arrogant? Well, because our culture tells us no one will love me if I'm perceived as full of myself or arrogant. And so it's the ability to just get curious about why you think a certain way, why you have you're apprehensive about things, and don't judge yourself. Just sort of like pull on the thread of questions. And that's what brings me to my answers and book titles. So hopefully it's helpful to other people too.
All right. There are two more big topics I want to talk to you about. So I hope we have time to get there. Here's the first one. I've mentioned a couple of times how highly I think of you as a damn good coach. And the fact is, and now this gets a little more complex, I don't think that highly in general of the coaching profession.
Me neither.
I know that. I know you have a sort of sense of humor about it and you have a viewpoint of it. But before we go any further, why don't you think that highly of it as a profession?
I go back and forth with, I really feel like it needs more, I don't know if it's licensing or just some kind of a better governing board to protect people, to protect clients. And right now it's still in its infancy and we don't have that as much.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my reason is because there's just such a wide range of caliber. There are some coaches who are really extraordinarily and helpful and are as good as any deep end psychologist or spiritual mentor that I've worked with, for real. And then there's a whole lot across the spectrum. And it's like, oh my God, really? This person thinks they have something they can, tell other people. Oh my God, I can't stand it. Okay. So what do you think, if you were just to say, make someone an extraordinary coach? What are the qualities or what's the vantage, the eyeglasses they need to be wearing to be such?
I think, training, number one, I believe in training. I think that if someone's hiring a coach, that coach should be trained. Coaching is not just a skill, but I believe it's an art. And I think that a lot of experience is always helpful. So that's number one. But I think that what makes someone a really great coach is kind of what we were just talking about is detachment. So my job as a coach is to not have an agenda. In other words, if you are my client and you bring to me a specific goal, I might think like, oh, I have the perfect way that Tami can make this goal happen and get the results that she wants. And that's not my job. My job is not to tell you how to do it, not even really to give you a framework, even if you ask me. That's consulting. If you want someone or training. My job is to just ask you questions to remind you that you are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole, and hold this space while you think through those questions to come to your own conclusions. I might offer observations along the way and things like that. But my job is really just to be curious. So what makes a great coach is like if they can have their own sort of, and it may not be an inherent quality, it may be something that they learned, but just to have that almost fierce curiosity for all things and do their best to not have an agenda, not have any judgment about their curiosity, but also follow their intuition. That's why I say it's like a skill and an art. It's a balance. And so, and it helps, I think, if you hire someone that has similar life experience to what you have. I know that matters to some people just from a relatability standpoint, but that's my 2 cents on that.
I like it. And, at the beginning of your book, Live Like You Give a Damn, you say to people, you're free to do whatever you want, including
Absolutely.
not listen to anything that I'm saying here, to do whatever. Like you are a free being. Don't do a thing. Don't want to take a risk. Don't take a risk. And, when I noticed when you started that way, I was like, oh, Andrea's not going to tell me what to do. She's not, she's empowering me actually right here in the beginning to follow what I think is best. I like her. I like this book right at the jump. How did that come to you to start that way?
I think probably because this is my 4th book. And I know I've heard the feedback from people about how they read self-help books, if they read the entire self-help book, how it helps them or how it doesn't help them. And so I think that when introductions are always very important to me, partly because like this is probably the first thing that people are going to read. And I wanted to, from the get-go, to make sure that people understood that they have the power in their own hands to make their own life decisions and listen to themselves.
Okay. And there's one last invitation, bold move that I want us to talk about. And, it's not that this section was funny, and it's not that it was the kind of thing that I necessarily, will talk about with other people, but it was really meaningful to me. And it's towards the beginning of the book. Learn to parent yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, it took me however many years to recognize that basically I was just going to have to do this. Nobody else was going to do it for me. I had to fill in these gaps. So explain what you mean by accepting the fact that we each need to provide this parenting for ourselves.
I think the reason I wanted to include this topic in this book is because I think for many of us, we get to a place where we look back on how we were parented, and whether it was, quote unquote, good or bad, and it's, hard to categorize. I understand that. But I think that it comes to a point where if we're trying to reconcile behavior, especially from one of our parents or both of our parents, there comes a place where and especially like if the parent has passed, that we have to accept that the parent is the way that they are and will likely not change. And kind of like, how am I going to handle this if they continue the way that they are, or if I never get any acknowledgement or apology and things like that? Because many times it's easier and less painful for us to hold out hope that they will change, that we will someday get the parent that we always wanted and that we truly deserve. And so I think that when you get to that place where you accept that person for all that they are, and I think that can be a very painful place, and there's a lot of grief there. Again, because it feels easier to hold out hope that they'll change. And so when you get to that place, and I got to that place, and my parents were wonderful in so many ways, but no parent is perfect. And so to accept that I'm not going to get the things that I would hoped that I would get, is that I had to, not that I had to bring them into my life myself and work on reparenting myself, but also that I had this opportunity, like to look at it more of an opportunity for growth. And it was also incredibly painful. So it's one of those moments where two seemingly opposite truths are true. It's painful to admit that you're probably not going to get what it is that you want, and also go through the work and look at it as an opportunity.
Andrea, you're someone I could talk to for even longer, and I hope we get the chance again. Andrea Owen, author of the new book, What Sounds True, Live Like You Give a Damn, 25 Bold Moves to Get Honest, Face the Hard Stuff, and Show Up for Yourself. She's also created What Sounds True, the audio series, Getting Damn Good at Life. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for listening, everybody. Bye-bye.
And if you'd like to watch Insights at the Edge on video and participate in the after-show Q&A session with our guests, come join us on Sounds True 1, a new membership community featuring award-winning original shows, live classes, community learning, guided meditations, and more with the leading wisdom teachers of our time. Use promo code PODCAST to get your first month free. You can learn more at join.soundstrue.com. Sounds True, waking up the world. The Sounds True Podcast Network.